Welcome to TimberTech's step-by-step guide for the installation of Advantage Rail level sections. Prior to construction, refer to TimberTech Advantage Rail installation guidelines and check local code requirements. Gather all of the required tools on the following list. Throughout the installation, wear safety glasses and PPE during cutting and drilling to protect yourself from composite or other shavings. The first step is installing the posts. Predetermine the support post layout to best utilize full-length 6-foot or 8-foot railing sections by setting the sleeved posts up to 72 inches apart for the 6-foot sections or up to 96 inches apart for the 8-foot sections. Plan for the most efficient and balanced section lengths should your deck not align with the use of full-length railing sections. Rail ends may need to be trimmed slightly to allow clearance for install. Consider post compatibility. Advantage Rail installs over 4x4 wood posts or TimberTech secure mount posts and can be used with 4-inch, 5-inch, or 5.5-inch post sleeves. Those secure mount posts are only compatible with 4-inch post sleeves. Once your posts are properly installed, prepare to install post sleeves and shim as needed. Begin by placing the post skirt into position over the wood post and onto the deck prior to installing the post sleeve. This prevents any marring of the post, which could occur by sliding the post skirt all the way over the sleeve. Lower the post sleeve over the wood post and into the post skirt. Then, place shims equally between the wood post and the composite rail post sleeves and check the post for plumb. The next step is installing the rail support brackets. Use the corrugated template to correctly position the rail attachment brackets to the post. The template is designed to be used with either 4-inch, 5-inch, or 5.5-inch post sleeves, 36-inch or 42-inch rail height, and with or without a post skirt. Please note, the Advantage Rail template is only compatible with post sleeves, post skirts, and brackets which are sold specifically for TimberTech composite railing systems. Cut and fold the template according to the post sleeve size you are using and determine where your bottom point will be, depending on whether or not you are using post skirts. Set the template at the bottom locating point, then center the template by folding the flaps back based on the post sleeve size that you are using. Use soft clamps to hold the template flush to the post. Make sure the clamps do not block the cutouts where the brackets will be placed. Place the top and bottom brackets into the cutouts on the template, making sure that the brackets are oriented right side up. Using a 5/32 drill bit, pre-drill through the post sleeve only, not into wood, using the holes in the brackets as the guide. Install the brackets using 2 numbered 10 by 3-inch screws per bracket, labeled A. Drive the screws evenly until fully seated and do not overdrive. Remove template and place on the next post, repeating the steps to install the brackets. Next, measure and cut the bottom rail. Measure the distance between the post sleeves where the bottom brackets are located, approximately 4 inches above the deck surface. Please note, at this time, recheck the dimension between the posts at the top brackets as well, to confirm the posts are plumb before moving on to the next step. Lay out and mark the bottom rail so that the balusters are equally spaced, ensuring that there is at least 1 7/8 inch from the edge of the last hole to the end of the rail on both ends. The maximum distance between balusters or a baluster and post should not exceed 4 inches. If using gaskets, cut an additional 1/16 inch from each end of the rail. Once the final measurements have been determined, use a miter saw to cut the rail to the desired length. The next step is cutting and installing the spacer. Install a baluster plug in the hole closest to each end of the bottom rail. Locate the 2 spacer alignment tools from the rail kit. These are 1-inch long pieces of baluster that will be used to align the spacer with the bottom rail. Install the spacer alignment tools over the plugs that were installed at rail ends. Install the spacer onto the spacer alignment tools, making sure that it is fully seated past the lip along the edge of the spacer, and that the spacer is level with the bottom rail. Measure and mark the spacer. If using gaskets, measure 7/8 inch offset from each end of bottom rail and place a mark on the spacer. If not using gaskets, measure 1 inch offset from each end of the bottom rail and place a mark on the spacer. Remove the spacer from the bottom rail and prepare to cut the spacer to length. Position the spacer on the saw in a U orientation so that the open end of the U is facing upward. This will help prevent chipping. You may also use snips or shears to cut the spacer. For round aluminum balusters, follow the same steps as before. When it's time to cut the baluster spacer insert, align the spacer insert with the trimmed spacer. Then mark 5/8 of an inch from each end of the spacer and cut along the marks with snips or shears. The baluster spacer insert must be cut 5/8 of an inch shorter than the spacer on each end so that it clears the rail brackets. Make sure that the spacer and spacer insert are installed and centered on the bottom rail and plugs when marking to cut so as to prevent misalignment. With both spacer types, test fit the spacer into the top brackets and trim each end if necessary. If it is discovered that the posts are not plumb, make adjustments to spacer cuts to ensure the best fit. Sections longer than 36 inches require the installation of foot blocks with plugs. This step begins with the installation of the plugs for the foot blocks. 1 foot block is required for sections between 3 and 6 feet in length, and 2 foot blocks are required for sections longer than 6 feet and should be spaced evenly within the length of the section. Begin by locating the position of the underside of the bottom rail, where the foot block will be installed. Foot blocks should either be space-centered between 2 balusters or baluster-centered below an existing baluster plug hole. If a foot block will be baluster-centered, install a baluster plug by pushing it into the hole on the top side of the rail, in the location where the foot block will be placed. If a foot block will be space-centered, mark the desired location and then pre-drill using a 5/32 inch drill bit through only the inner wall of the bottom rail, making sure to avoid drilling into the outer wall. Proceed to place the foot block plug on the bottom side of the rail and mount in place using a number 10 by 1 3/4 inch screw labeled D. Use pliers to gently hold the baluster plug to keep it from spinning while the foot block screw is driven. Drive the screw until it seats. Do not overdrive. You are now ready to install the bottom rail and foot blocks. If your setup includes gaskets or foot blocks, make sure to install them before adding the bottom rail. Slide the gaskets over the rail ends and install the foot blocks onto the foot block plugs. Then, you may begin installing the bottom rail by placing it onto both bottom brackets, centering the bottom opening over the brackets. Note that the rail may rock slightly from one side to the other. Firmly press the bottom rail onto each bracket until the rail snaps into place, and ensure that the rail is fully seated onto each bracket and centered between the posts. Next, install the baluster plugs. You can choose to install the plugs either after cutting the bottom rail to length, while it's on a work table or sawhorse and before adding the foot blocks, or at this stage once the bottom rail is already secured between the posts. Press a baluster plug into each hole on the bottom rail, orienting the plugs so that the sides are parallel with the bottom rail. This will make the baluster easier to install. Use a rubber mallet to help with installing plugs and to ensure that the plugs are fully seated to the rail. Please note, for ease of installation, install plugs when ambient temperature is above 35 degrees Fahrenheit. The next step is installing the spacer. Begin by sliding the spacer onto the top brackets. The upper flange of the spacer sits on the nose of the bracket, and the lower flange is placed into the slot just below the center of the bracket. Install one baluster onto the plug nearest to the center of the rail section to center the spacer and to minimize sagging while the remaining balusters are installed. Double-check the length and fit of the spacer and trim the ends of the spacer if necessary while ensuring that the baluster slots remain centered. Using a 5/32 inch drill bit, pre-drill through the center hole on the underside of the bracket, labeled C, and through the lower flange of the spacer. Loosely attach a number 8x1 and 3/4 inch self-tapping fascia screw, labeled C, into the hole to hold the spacer in place. Repeat on the other end to secure the spacer. You can now begin installing the balusters. Starting near the center of the rail section, insert balusters by placing the bottom of the baluster onto the plug, tipped away from the spacer at a slight angle, and push the baluster down onto the plug. Stand the baluster up vertically and press into the corresponding spot in the upper spacer until it clicks into place. You will feel the baluster snap into place as it fully seats past the top lip of the spacer. Make sure the baluster is fully inserted into the spacer and that the bottom of the baluster is pushed down and flush to the bottom rail. Repeat for remaining balusters, working from the center out towards the post on each side. For round aluminum balusters, follow the previous steps and then finish by aligning the cutouts of the round aluminum baluster spacer insert with the balusters on the deck side of the rail, and snap the spacer insert into place along the entire length to secure the balusters. Please note, the round aluminum baluster spacer insert must be 5/8 of an inch shorter than the spacer on each end so that it clears the brackets. The next step is cutting and installing the top rail. Measure the distance between the posts at the top bracket and mark the rail at the length measured. If using gaskets, the top rail should be 1/8 of an inch shorter than the measured overall length. Cut the rail at the final marks using a miter saw. Test fit the top rail over the brackets to ensure a proper fit before moving on. If using gaskets, install them at this point by placing them over the ends of the top rail. Next, set the top rail over the spacer and top brackets and press down firmly over the entire length to ensure that the brackets and spacer are completely encased by the top rail. Finish driving the number 8x1 and 3/4 inch self-tapping fascia screw labeled C into one end of the top rail. Use an extended length driver bit to avoid scratching the post sleeve, and use a clamp to temporarily hold the top rail into place for stability. Pre-drill through the open hole location labeled B that is nearest to the center of the rail section and furthest from the post using a 5 3/32 inch drill bit following the angle of the hole. Do not pre-drill through the hole location nearest to the post, as this location will not be used. Be sure to drill through 2 layers only and not completely through the top rail. Drive one numbered 10x1 and 3/4 inch screw labeled B into the hole until snug, following the angle. Check that the top bracket is flush with the bottom of the top rail. If it's not, reverse all screws slightly and tighten again, holding down the top rail to ensure that it is installed flush. Repeat the previous steps to secure the other end of the rail. The final step is to install the post caps. Apply silicone inside the post caps and slide the cap onto the tops of the posts to complete the project. With all of this in mind, you can install your new TimberTech Advantage railing system and enhance your outdoor space.